incredible and unprecedented crisis, a time when we really need to be thinking about how we address the financial challenges that we might have and how we adjust our personal finances at a time when everything around us seems to be changing for ourselves and our families. We have a terrific panel with us today that I am extremely excited to have joining us. We have Sue Rogan, Director of Strategic Partnerships from the Maryland Cash Campaign, Brendan McKay, broker owner of McKay Mortgage, and Irene Tata, who is a financial advisor with Behnam and Associates, ably standing in for Anna Behnam today, who had an unexpected personal situation, and we really appreciate Irene for stepping in at the last minute to join us. So three terrific people who really have a lot of expertise and are going to walk us through today how to address this crisis in a way that maintains our financial security and addresses the challenges that we all know so many are facing. And the numbers are staggering. This crisis is a massive challenge for so many in our community. It has taken a great toll on us, not just our broader economy, but on the day-to-day lives of so many Montgomery County residents, so many District 1 residents, so many Maryland residents, and people all over the world. Maryland has lost 21,000 jobs already. Unemployment rolls have multiplied in a rate that we have never seen, including during the Great Recession, at a speed we have never seen, including during the Great Recession, more than we've ever experienced in any of our lifetimes. This is a situation where 300,000 people have applied for unemployment already in Maryland, over 39,000 in Montgomery County in the past month alone. And it's important that we have these discussions to figure out how to address them. We're trying as best as we can at the county level with a significant COVID relief package that we've put forward to support families with cash assistance in that regard, for businesses to address some of the challenges that they're facing, with a grant program at the state and federal level as well, with significant amounts of funding. But this is a crisis that requires all of us to take responsibility as well for ourselves, and to make sure that we are accessing the resources that are available and are addressing the challenges that we face together. So each panelist is going to take a few minutes each to address how the current pandemic has affected financial decisions, share some of their knowledge in their particular area of expertise of how to manage finances when it comes to all the different areas of our lives. We have folks joining us on Zoom via the link. You should be able to find the question and answer section by clicking the chat boxes at the bottom of your device. We're also keeping up with Facebook Live, and if you're joining us there, please feel free to input your questions or comments there, and we'll do our best with a bit of a time delay to answer those questions as well. We're following both. Feel free to be joining us and asking your questions in either way. The goal here is to provide as much information as we can, but to be as interactive as possible. At a time of physical distance, we're trying to make sure that we have a spiritual togetherness and coming together to address the challenges that we face, to learn about how best to address the crisis that we're all in, and to make sure that we're doing what we can to get through this together. Of course, the public health emergency is first and foremost on the minds of all of us in terms of our personal responsibilities to ourselves, our families, and our neighbors, and also in government. But we recognize the unprecedented toll that this is taking on our economy and on the budgets of families, on the budgets of businesses, and on the everyday decisions that we're needing to make. We did a Fridays with Friedson last week, or a couple weeks ago, excuse me, on wellness and mental health, another key area of anxiety. But we know that all of these things are so directly tied to one another, including the financial uncertainty that creates so much of the stress and anxiety for so many people. I always think of finances like oxygen. You only have to think about it if you don't have enough of it. And when there's not enough oxygen in the room, it's the only thing that you think about. And when you're a family that doesn't have enough money to pay for food, or to pay rent or mortgage payments, or to keep up with your needs or your children's needs or your parents' needs, it's the only thing you think about. And so that's really what today is all about. And I am just so grateful again to our terrific panelists today. And we're going to get started here. I want to remind everybody again to ask your questions on the Zoom in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, or on Facebook Live. Just go ahead, write in the comment section and ask your questions, and we will keep up with you as well. So let's go ahead and move on to our first speaker, which is Irene. Irene works with Behnam and Associates. She's been there for 8 years. She studied at a place I've sure some have heard of, the Wharton School, place that I could never get into, but that's okay. And has worked in investments in New York. We're now lucky to have her in our community, serving many of those needs, and really appreciate, again, my personal appreciation for her stepping in here at the last minute to impart some knowledge on us and make sure that we are preparing from a personal finance standpoint the best way that we can. So with that, Irene.
Andrew, thank you very much. I'm happy I was able to step in and be here. It is a very difficult time, stressful for everybody. And one of the key things we say is to try to stay on course. And, take assessment is what we tell our clients of, first and foremost, what your budget is, how you're spending the money, because money going out can be stressful, especially with the uncertainty of, is money coming in? Will it continue to come in? How do we navigate short term? One of the cornerstones with the financial planning is a cash reserve. So we encourage people to have that for basically 3 to 6 months of cash reserve for unintended circumstances, including income coming down or unexpected expenses. For retired people who are concerned about what they should be doing and they don't have income coming in, we like to tell them, have 3 years of very safe investments from which you can draw in times of uncertainty, because there are market cycles. And putting it into perspective, the markets, as everyone knows, they've been negatively affected by everything that's been going on. But this is part of a healthy cycle, as much as it's difficult to hear that now. The good side of it is that for those who are able to continue investing and make their contributions, your investments have gone on sale. So I will say, so coming back again, is take a review of your budget just to be prudent, whether you're in a situation where your job continues. If you're in a situation where your income has stopped, then you immediately look and you cut out any non-essential expenses, and you'll be drawing down any cash reserve that you may have. In the event that the cash reserve is exhausted, and cash reserve basically would be balances in checking account, savings account. If you have any savings in investment accounts that you can draw upon, that would be your cash reserve. So these are the funds that you would go to first. There is a provision where individuals are able to access their retirement accounts under certain conditions. So if you have contributed to an IRA, or in the past, in changing jobs, if you rolled over your 401k to an IRA, and you're under the age of 59, you have access to those funds, assuming you meet certain qualifications. And I'll go through sort of what access you would have, and for starting the qualifications. And again, they're changing a little bit, but if you have had a COVID diagnosis, or someone in your family directly has had a COVID diagnosis, or if you've been impacted with your job directly because of COVID, you have access to your IRA, and you can withdraw the money without penalty. And the penalty prior to this was a 10% early withdrawal penalty. So that has been eliminated. If you're pulling the money out and it's from a tax deferred account, you will owe taxes on that money. But you have 3 years to pay those taxes, so it can be spread out. And you also have the ability during that 3-year period to put the money back into the retirement account. Many people, their biggest assets are tied up in retirement accounts. So legislation has been passed to enable those that have been directly affected by COVID to access those retirement accounts. There are conditions I would check, qualify to take that money out early without penalty, and then have the flexibility to pay taxes over a 3-year period, or when things stabilize, that you return the money to your retirement accounts, okay? So that is one area of access that people didn't have, or if they had it, there was a 10% penalty if you're under the age of 59. For others who are fortunate enough to who have income and their cash reserves remain intact, I encourage you, please continue to dollar cost average, make those contributions to your retirement accounts. Again, your retirement accounts, basically your nest egg has gone on sale. So if you are not maxing out in your 401k, the maximum contribution for 2020, if you're under 50, is $19,500. And if you're over 50, you can put an additional $6,500 in, so $26,000. So looking at your budget, if you can squeeze in extra time for savings, this is the time to do it. If you've been on the fence about making investments, find a financial advisor and talk to them, because when the markets are down, as uncomfortable as it is, it's a good time to, if you've got any ability to save and invest, it's a good time to invest. So that is, that's in a synopsis, what I touched on is look at your budgets, cut out anything superfluous, non-essentials, reduce them. Even if you're, just to be prudent, look at your cash reserve to make sure if something happens that you have a cushion. If you've had to access your cash reserve or you're in a position where you don't have one, then you're looking for other alternatives. You have the ability to access your IRA accounts or your 401k. With the 401k, if you're actively employed, you need to check with your employer if they have a provision that enables you to access the 401k with qualifying conditions, being that you have a COVID diagnosis, someone in your family has a COVID diagnosis, or that your income has been impacted directly as a result of the COVID situation. So I'm available for questions if anybody has any. So Andrew, I think that's
yeah. Well, thank you for that. I think there's a lot of really important points in there. Cutting essential costs as best as you can, looking at the savings and cash reserves. I thought the particularly important point is that if you're able, now is the best time. The hardest times are usually the best times to be continuing or even ramping up investments, but that's obviously only if for those who are able. I have a question here from one of our attendees about stimulus checks and asking at this time, given the uncertainty in the market, are you better off putting that stimulus check into a money market, a checking or savings account, or going ahead and investing? I think it directly relates to the point that you were making earlier in terms of retirement and other accounts. But regardless, if it's not for a retirement account, that $1,200 check, if you need it, you have to spend it. But if you don't need it immediately, what's the best way to do it given the times that we're in?
So if you don't need it immediately and you do have a good cash reserve, and the cash reserve being in 3 to 6 months of expenses in investment, whether you do it through your existing retirement account or you do an IRA, it may be a good opportunity to begin. Stressing the first is cash reserve, that you have an adequate cash reserve. If you are a little bit unsure, then at this point I would keep it in, if there's an immediate need, obviously it goes straight into your checking account. Otherwise, have it as a reserve in your savings account. But if you are in a position where you can invest it, I would say it's a good opportunity to invest.
Great. And it sounds to me like it's basically human needs are the same as financial needs. It's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you need to figure out, make sure you have the immediate needs, and then the intermediate needs, and then the long-term needs like retirement and college savings and others. And that seems to be good advice. There's a question from another one of our attendees about whether decisions should be different depending on how close somebody is to projected retirement age. Somebody asking, should they make different decisions if they're within 5 years of retirement age versus 10 years, et cetera?
So the general rule is the further away you are from retirement, these funds need time to grow and they're going to be more aggressive. So the closer you are to retirement, you're then looking to shift your assets. And I would say that 5 years is kind of on the cusp where you should be looking at not a 3-year cash reserve, but transitioning more to maybe a year of very safe investments with a view towards when you hit retirement, that you've got 3 years of safe investments to draw upon when you're in retirement. 10 years, I would say, you know, just investing, and also know that, I mean, people feel that the moment they retire, their investments need to be conservatively invested. And I think that there needs to be a shift to know that when you retire, most people are going to be living in retirement for, you retire at 65, and you plan on living another 20, 25, 30 years till age 95. That's 30 years where your assets need to grow. If they're conservative, there's no room for growth. We have this notion of inflation. So if you're 10 years away, I would say probably just keep the course. And the target date funds that are out there are professionally managed for retirement dates, and they will shift your asset allocation. So if you're not working with a financial advisor, the target date funds are an excellent professionally managed way for you to allocate your retirement savings.
Yeah, that's great. Those are the most popular. When I was working at the state level and did a lot of work and ran the 529 program, the age-based portfolios, which are target date portfolios, were the most popular because it was kind of a set it and forget it. You didn't have to worry about changing the dynamics of what that was in. As you got closer to when your child would go to college, the fund was being adjusted accordingly to manage the risk and the potential. So
exactly.
I appreciate that. Okay, well, why don't we, I appreciate that. It's a great presentation, a lot of really great advice there. I think we're gonna move on to our next speaker, Brendan McKay, but if there are additional questions for Irene, we can certainly circle back to those. We do have a couple other questions that may be for other panelists that we have coming in. So if your question hasn't been answered, we will continue to answer them. Just a reminder before we switch over to Brendan, that you can continue to ask your questions on Zoom on the question and answer at the bottom of your device, and also on Facebook Live as part of the Facebook Live. So moving on to Brendan McKay. He's the owner of McKay Mortgages, a passionate and significant advocate for not only mortgages but for the Washington Wizards, which I can attest to. In 2019, he was the #2 mortgage broker in Maryland and number 66 in the nation on the Scotsman Guide's top originators, and he's funded over $170 million in residential mortgages. Very active locally in the Bethesda Chamber of Commerce, BNI, and several DC Metro-based organizations. Really appreciate Brendan joining us, who will speak a little bit about how to deal with mortgages. There's been a lot of conversation about mortgage forbearance and different executive orders from the governor, different conversations of advocacy efforts at the federal level of what should and could happen with mortgages, both at the state and the federal level. But I think there's a lot of confusion of what these different options mean and what the impact would be on individual homeowners, and ultimately what the impact will be, not just during the crisis, which obviously we have to get through, but immediately following or sometime after the crisis. So I appreciate, Brendan, you joining us to help explain that and unwind some of that for us, so that we understand, when we hear these things being discussed, what do they mean, and how should we be reacting, and what should we be doing if we do own a home and we're having trouble making our mortgage payment, moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, what I really wanted to do today was clarify a lot of what people are hearing and what politicians are saying, or what you hear on the news. And a lot of times they'll cover it in a quick, broad stroke. But as you know, most stuff is a little more nuanced than what you might immediately hear. The biggest question I get around everything mortgage related with what's happening right now is different payment relief options. The CARES Act came out, and it spelled out that mortgage lenders are basically required to allow borrowers to go into forbearance. Which, if the conversation ends at that, you might just think, okay, I don't have to make my mortgage payment for a while. But that is almost certainly not the case. There's three main types of mortgage forbearance. And which one is available to you is not only going to depend on the specifics of your situation, but also on the lender that actually holds your loan and what options they are offering. The most immediate and common one out there, without you pushing and asking for other options, is just actual forbearance. And what forbearance technically means is that you will get your mortgage payments basically go on pause. The most common one is that you have 3 months of forbearance, where you do not have to make mortgage payments on those actual months. But in month 4, all 4 payments are due at once. So it is certainly not the free rides people might think it is, or the hall pass or anything like that. And really an option that doesn't make sense for a lot of people, unless you are like, we just want to stay liquid during this time. We recognize that the payments are going to be due and we want to get caught up immediately. But most people are looking for a situation because their income has dropped drastically and they're not looking to make 4 mortgage payments at once. Some lenders are, if you're able to, or some lenders are able to offer where they will pause the payments for, let's just say, 3 months. And then over the course of the next 12 months, you can spread out those payments that you missed. So if your payment's $1,000 a month, over the following 12 months, once you're out of forbearance, you can take that $3,000 you owe and spread it out evenly over a 12-month period to pay it back. Or they'll let you do half payments for a 3-month period, and then you owe $1,500 over a 12-month period. So there are some options like that. There also, and the third type of forbearance is really more accurately described as deferment, where you don't make payments for a 3-month period, and those missed payments are tacked on at the very end of your loan. So month 4, you just go back to paying your mortgage as normal, which for a lot of people is really what they would be most favorable for them. If you need help, ask for it. The options are there, and the lenders are required to provide forbearance as long as you attest that you have been financially impacted by COVID. But you really need to know what you're getting into beforehand, and make sure you're not just, hey, forbearance, click a box. Some lenders are letting you do it online, where you just go into forbearance and that's it. It's a 5-minute process, but you're really not going to know the details of what you're getting into. And I'm going to share the screen real quick. The best resource that I have found is a website called forbearancereport.com. And it was actually created by another mortgage broker in California and his partner, Scott Shang and Josh Lewis, 2 really smart guys. And you can find all the information you need on here. What's most helpful is the part I'm showing right now. They've created a resource that you can go to for almost every major mortgage servicer out there. And you can click on these links and find out the specifics of what they're offering, the phone number you need to call, all that good stuff. And there's comments that people have left with their experience of what has happened, FAQ section, all this good stuff. Just a lot of really great free information. So definitely check that out, and we can leave that website in the comment section. There were a couple questions sent to me preemptively that I want to make sure I address. One was, what's the best way to miss payments? And there is no way to actually miss payments entirely. You're going to have to pay them at one point or another. You can pause payments, but they can't be skipped entirely. The best solution of what I've listed kind of depends on your situation. Like I said, if you're pausing and you can catch up quickly, great, but you really just need to think about the specifics of your situation and what's offered to you. As far as what the impact of mortgage forbearance will be on your credit report, as far as on your credit score, if you go into a forbearance, while the loan is in forbearance, your mortgage will no longer be counting towards your credit scoring, which means that for most people, their mortgage history, if it's a positive one, making your mortgage payment every month has a very positive effect on your credit score. If that entire debt is not being counted towards your score, towards the scoring system, that's going to drop your credit score. That being said, once you are out of forbearance, it should go right back to normal. So you'll see a temporary dip, and then it should go back, to being a positive thing, assuming you have a positive mortgage history, of course. That being said, that's strictly on the scoring. If once your loan goes into forbearance, it is going to show up on your credit report as modified. Your mortgage has been modified, forever, as long as you have that mortgage. And lenders are probably going to take that into account. So if you look to buy a home, you'll probably be fine in that case. But if you're looking to refinance that mortgage in the future, there's a decent chance every lender is going to handle this differently going forward, but they might make you wait 12 months until you're out of forbearance before they're willing to, or I've even heard 5 years. That is all still being shaken out, but know that there's probably going to be some repercussions on that end for it. And we are in an incredibly low interest rate environment right now, so keep that in mind. Really the biggest message I wanted to get through, though, only use this if you need it. If you can make your mortgage payment, you should make your mortgage payment. It's not a free ride. There's going to be consequences to varying degrees at the end of it. And frankly, not all of it is completely clear yet on exactly how lenders and institutions are going to treat this stuff. So you're not gaming the system. You're going to pay it eventually. And it could easily have repercussions for you in the future. So be very careful for it. That being said, if you need the help, get it. There's lots of resources out for you. And I'm obviously happy to help anyone that has questions specific to their situation. So, yeah.
Thank you, Brendan. That was really helpful. There's a lot of important information there. We have a number of questions that have come in from different attendees that I wanted to ask you. First question is, you talked a little bit about the credit aspect of it. If you could broaden that out, there have been a number of folks who have asked in different formats of what happens if I do miss a mortgage payment right now.
If you miss a mortgage payment without having a forbearance plan in place, it will show up as a mortgage late on your credit report, which is more or less the worst thing you can do for your credit score and your credit history possible. So don't just stop making your mortgage payment and then planning on saying, well, it was a pandemic, like you should remove it. That's probably not going to happen.
So the key is to reach out to your financial institution immediately to work out plan, including a forbearance option.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. And a number of questions as well on refinancing and the question of refinancing right now. The first question related to this is whether refinancing is a good option to lower the payment if someone is having trouble making that monthly payment, if that would be an option to explore.
It's definitely an option to explore. A lot of people could definitely use the relief that refinancing can provide right now. You want to make sure that you're going into it eyes wide open and know the costs associated with it, and if you're starting your loan over again, and everything that's happening. But yeah, absolutely, if you need budget relief, that's definitely something good to look at. That being said, understandably, lenders, when they're underwriting new loans right now, are being hyper vigilant as far as verifying people's employment. Previously, they would just verify it 10 days before closing, and now they're verifying it the day of closing. And at closing, you're obviously signing documents saying you're still employed, you're not furloughed and stuff like that. So if that's a situation that's happening, that's causing it, you may have trouble qualifying for a new mortgage, but it's something that you should absolutely look into for sure. And yeah, you should be looking into any options that can save you money right now, no doubt.
Great. And then there's another related question, actually a number of questions kind of all fall in the same refinancing bucket, but what tips do you have for refinancing? Not just if you can't make a payment right now, but if, perhaps, is this a good time to be exploring refinancing with where interest rates are? Is this something that as folks are taking a look at their household budget and figuring out what the different costs are and their savings if they are able to have them with retirement and college and other things, is this a time to be looking at that? Should folks be exploring it if they're able?
Yeah, absolutely. Interest rates are more or less as low as they've been since 2011. So it's absolutely a great time to look into doing it. Some general advice I like to give people when they're analyzing their refinance options is don't just focus on what your payment difference is. Now, alluding to the previous question, like if you're just looking for budget relief, yeah, absolutely focus on that. But when you're looking at trying to figure out the true value of refinancing, I think the best way to do it is to look at the interest that you're saving, because that's the cost that you're reducing. A monthly payment is going to reduce your budget, but if you're stretching the debt back out, that's different than actual savings. So what I like to show people is if you're 5 years into your loan, look at a 25-year loan. Doesn't mean that's definitely what you do, but you look at a 25-year loan and you keep your mortgage balance the same, and that'll show you a true apples to apples of how much interest that you're actually saving. And then you know how much benefit there is to it. If it makes more sense for you and your family to look at that, but then structure it as a 30-year loan, that's great. But at least you know how much money you're actually saving, and making the decision based on that. If you can afford it, the monthly payment increase financially, looking at shorter terms like 15 and 30-year mortgages, is definitely something worth considering. My general advice with that is if you look at that and you see the payment, and even for a minute you go, that payment, I can make it, but it's stretching a little bit thin, don't do it. The lower interest rate that a 15-year loan will have is not worth stretching yourself thin, because while the interest is low, the flexibility is not. So those are some general advice that I have on refinance situations and how to approach analyzing your options.
Yeah, great. There's a question that we have related to this, and the question really is more of an operational, practical standpoint, less about is it a good time to refinance and what you should think about when you do, but how. What is the best way? If someone were to say, hey, I want to decide whether or not I'm going to refinance, how should they start that process? What should they be looking at? What's a good way to judge trustworthy people that they could reach out to find out what a fair and reasonable rate is? What's the best way to start that process for them?
I think, in my opinion, you're going to get varied opinions on this. A lot of people, their natural instinct is to call whoever has their mortgage currently because they think it's going to be easier, but that's not necessarily the case. They're going to have to verify a lot of the same stuff, and who currently has your mortgage is usually a big, oftentimes clunky company without the best customer service and not even necessarily the best terms. I think your best bet is to work with somebody local. And I say that not only because I'm local, but also most local loan officers and financial professionals rely entirely on their reputation to get business. And they rely on referrals from people in the community and from past clients, and like I said, their reputation. So if you go and look online, they're always going to have great reviews because they do a good job. Because if they don't, and they screw something up on a referral source, that referral source cuts off to them, and that's a big deal to them. If some big bank with a call center in the middle of the country does a bad job, it just doesn't matter to them as much as it does to somebody like me or another local loan officer. So I think that's always going to be your best bet.
Great. And final question here, and then we're going to move on to Sue for the next portion of this. But there's a question that from one of our attendees. They know that you're not a real estate agent, but you're in the housing market more broadly. If they were considering a home purchase prior to this, does it make more sense to continue that search based on everything that's happened? Does it make more sense to wait to see where things happen to the economy? What advice would you have besides the fact that if they were going to look for a mortgage, that they should go to somebody who's local, as you just said?
I could get myself in trouble answering this question. So I would definitely, I'll give an answer, but I'm going to preface it with rely on the advice of your local realtor that you trust with this kind of stuff. And I'm still seeing people buying and selling houses. I've seen a slowdown of, and once again, my sample size is very small. So just because of what I've seen doesn't mean that is what is happening in the market. But I have seen a slowdown of higher end real estate. Say stuff, sales prices over $400,000 and $500,000, but stuff below that has still been chugging along. So my advice to you is that if it makes sense for you and your family to buy a home right now, that you should still consider doing it, although tread carefully, for sure. The market, both the real estate market and the mortgage market and the stock market and everything is volatile right now. And you should just tread extremely carefully and make sure that you have good professionals that you can rely on and that are going to advise you in your best interest, not just getting a sale done or whatever, but actually going to advise you based on their expertise to the best of their abilities.
Yeah, I think the broad message is seek professional advice and make sure it's somebody who you can trust.
Yep,
right.
For sure.
I think that seems to be the theme of what you're saying. I think that brings us well to our next panelist here, Sue, and I am really excited to have Sue here. In my previous life, working as a senior policy advisor and deputy chief of staff in the comptroller's office, and in my capacity working at the state level, particularly on the Maryland 529 program, college savings program, and with disability savings accounts, the Maryland Cash Campaign is at the forefront of dealing with personal finance issues for residents facing all kinds of different financial needs and financial hardships. And Sue and her colleagues, the Maryland Cash Campaign, are an incredible resource for that. And I'm really excited to have her, and excited to have somebody who has a direct connection and a long history with Montgomery County, formerly working with our Office of Consumer Protection, which is a great resource. We're one of only 2 counties in the state that has our own Office of Consumer Protection. And so I just want to make a plug for that. If you are facing consumer issues, Eric Friedman and their team in the Office of Consumer Protection is a huge help. They work closely with the state Office of the Attorney General Consumer Protection Division, but having our own resources and staff here to direct at the local level is tremendous. And Sue comes with that background. She currently serves as the Director of Strategic Partnerships with the Cash Campaign of Maryland, which is an acronym for Creating Assets, Savings, and Hope. And I think it couldn't be more true that financial security is freedom for so many people, and the Cash Campaign really focus on that. It's a nonprofit that works to increase financial well-being of individuals and families across the state, and Sue leads the engagement and development of partner organizations throughout the state to provide financial education and coaching programs for residents who need it. Really excited to have you, Sue. Really appreciate all the work that you do as an advocate and a resource provider to our residents. And with that, Sue, take us away.
Andrew, thank you so much. I really appreciate your leadership in bringing us all together today to talk about this important topic. It really is very critical right now. I'm going to share my screen to go over some resources. I'm hoping I do this correctly. All right, hopefully you're seeing the Cash Academy's website. Again, CASH stands for Creating Asset Savings and Hope. I think hope is the favorite part of our name and something we really like to provide for people. We provide different programs and services to build the financial well-being of low to moderate income individuals and families in Baltimore City and across Maryland. And one of those vital programs is the free tax preparation. For families who earn under $56,000 a year, they can have their taxes done for free. As expected, right now that service is on hold, but the tax deadline has been moved to July 15th. And in Montgomery County, we work with the amazing Community Action Agency and Bank on Gaithersburg to provide this program. And as soon as that is back online and able to be provided, people can check this website, which is the county's cashback website, to find when that service will reopen. We also provide financial education because we know how hard it is to learn about money. So we have financial education classes, which are now all transformed to webinars. We have one coming up on Monday to talk about those stimulus checks that we mentioned before, to kind of understand who's eligible for them, how they might be able to go onto the IRS website and put in their information to be able to receive those checks. We also have a webinar next Thursday with the Maryland Attorney General to talk about cybersecurity. We're all online so much more right now. And unfortunately, cyber criminals are trying to find our personal information and data. So that webinar will be on Thursday. And then, as Andrew mentioned, we also offer financial coaching. We have 2 great programs, one where people can work with certified financial planners who are very gracious in donating their time to us so that people can access their expertise and knowledge to create a financial plan. And then we also have one where people can work with a trained coach for indefinite, maybe even up to a year, that would actually be able to help people create their spending plan and reach their financial goals. So those are some of the programs and services that CASH offers. We also work very closely with our great partner, Cafe Montgomery MD, which stands for the Coalition for the Advancement of Financial Education in Montgomery County, in doing financial education classes and coaching. But some of the things I really wanted to share and go over today is on our MD Cash Academy's website, we have created resources. We know it's very hard to kind of navigate and decipher all the information that's coming in over the news through different social media platforms. So we put everything together on the Cash Academy site, and just let everybody know all the information in the classes and the financial coaching, all this is provided free. We are a nonprofit. We are funded to do this work and to get this information out to people. And we want to make sure that people know that no products or services are being promoted on these resource pages or through our classes or through our coaching. So just some very specific tips around the financial difficulties that people may be experiencing right now is we've created this, we're trying to be sort of catchy about it if possible. We're calling it our SMART method for managing your money, where S stands for stopping or postponing. I think Irene alluded to this as well too. What are things that we absolutely can push off right now and not put any money on? Maybe even stopping that clothing budget category, right? Where we can all just wear the same clothes we already have. If we were thinking about a car purchase, maybe we can postpone and push that off for now. So the M stands for monitor. And again, to echo what Irene said, it is always important to create that budget or that spending plan. But as resources or money or income is decreasing, or we might be afraid that it might be, it is absolutely critical to do this right now. So creating that list of money that's coming in, any kind of income, whether it's someone helping you out, maybe it's a public benefit that you're now eligible for, every single dollar that's coming in and every single dollar that's going out. I really tell people when I'm talking with them to treat every dollar as you might your child or your dog or your colleague or something that you hold dear, and actually know where every single dollar is going. Create that spending plan and look at it every single week so you know where your money's going and that you're making the conscious decision on where it goes versus it just sort of flowing out. So the A in our acronym stands for allow. So what money will you spend on? Kind of make an idea of what your priorities are with your expenses. What's really important right now? Typically we say keep an eye on food, housing, transportation, but for some people in the environment that we're in now, that might be internet or cell phone service because we have to stay connected. The R stands for reduce. So what are some things that you can cut back on? Maybe it's the streaming services that you have. Maybe it's switching to generic prescriptions. Is there a membership or a subscription that you can just hold off on right now? So what are some things that you can spend a little bit on, but you're going to reduce the full amount that you had spending before? And then T stands for talk. It is really important. And you know, money is a very difficult conversation to have in normal time, but it's important to talk about it, especially now, because we don't want people to suffer silently with the burden that they may be experiencing around finances. We want to have conversations with it as a family. Maybe see if you can bring the whole family into the spending plan and talk about ways of cutting back right now. Maybe have the family go around and who can turn off the most lights, you know, whatever it is, bring the whole family into it. And if you are sheltering in place now and you're alone, do a Google Hangout with friends and family to talk about money and what's happening and tips that they may all share on ways to kind of reduce expenses at this point. So that's sort of our SMART method for managing money. And then we also encourage people, sort of similar to what Brendan was talking about, is to contact creditors. I know we talked a lot about, you know, mortgages, but there are other lenders that people may be considering that they are having difficulty paying. And while there may be some protections right now that are in place in regarding to evictions, utility shut off, it isn't a blanket law or regulation that says you don't have to pay anybody right now and not have some repercussions from it. I was talking with a gentleman who actually felt that he could stop paying his car insurance during this time and he would still be covered for insurance. So really reach out to the companies that you're doing business with. If you're concerned about making those payments, reach out to them, find out what kind of relief, but make sure for a consumer protection background, you get all of this in writing. Whatever it is that they've agreed to as far as not having payments made for a month or 2 months, whatever it might be, please get that in writing and make sure you can document that. We encourage people to get professional help, whether you have the resources to work with a financial planner or reach out to our free financial coaches and programs. And then kind of the last sort of ideas are think about ways to supplement your income. So the Community Action Agency in Montgomery County, or CASH does as well, we have staff on board who can help people understand what benefits that they may be eligible for now. There was a news article yesterday that talked about 40% of people who are now going to food banks or to the different food programs are going there for the first time ever. And that's great. Utilize the services and the programs that are available to help you through this time. And then we certainly have to circle back on consumer scams. So the Federal Trade Commission has received over 18,000 complaints that are related to this health crisis. And it's really important for people to watch every email, every phone call, every post they get or a text, and consider it with caution. There are a lot of, unfortunately, scam artists out there now who are trying to separate us from our dollars and line their pockets with money that are completely unrelated to a legitimate service. So we've seen some reports about a list of your neighbors who have been infected with the COVID-19 coronavirus, and you can click on this link and access who those neighbors are. That is absolutely a scam, and that person is trying to get into your computer and actually access personal data. We've seen different offers about a special filter for your water so that you don't get any kind of infection through your water system. That is a scam. So there's a lot of different creative ways that people are trying to separate us from our dollars. And as you mentioned, Andrew, Montgomery County has a great Office of Consumer Protection. While they are all working from home as well, they are available by email. And it's really important, if you have a concern about something, to reach out to them and to get some information from them before clicking on anything, before separating any dollars from yourself. And just be careful about anything that's coming in, because you don't know who it is that's actually on that other end of that email, text message, or phone call. So be very careful. Consumer protection is a key piece of personal finance. So with that, I am happy to take any questions.
Well, great. We have a number of questions for you, and I really appreciate that. And I'm pleased that we're all joined here to do the T in SMART, which is talk about these issues and make sure that we are focusing on them. And I think your presentation makes clear of how all of these things fit together, and the different presentations that you're hearing from different people in different parts of the financial community and the financial world are offering very similar advice of best ways to address this. But a couple questions here. First question is, we have a couple of people who have referenced maxing out their credit card in the early part of this crisis based on financial challenges, and asking for advice of what they should do. What should their next step be of addressing that issue?
So unfortunately, I completely understand that. Sometimes, that happens, that we're not able to pay the credit card off every single month and avoid those interest charges. And so some things to consider are, at this point, if that person is having difficulty in making the credit card payment, even just the minimum payment, contact the credit card company and see if there's anything that they'd be willing to do for them. If possible, try to at least make the minimum payment. As Brennan noted with your mortgage, if you miss a payment, that is the worst thing you can do to a credit score. The biggest part of your credit score is paying on time. So if possible, at least try to make the minimum payment. If you cannot make it, contact the credit card company or the lender and find out if they will do any kind of accommodations at this time. But try to really, again, go back to creating that spending plan and reducing all the expenses that you can do, and see if there's a way to make that minimum payment to continue that good, positive information going to the credit reporting agencies.
Two related questions that we're getting from a number of different participants here. One is about tax payment plans. That we know that the tax deadlines have been postponed until the summer, which is great and really important for a lot of residents who are struggling. But there are a lot of people who are not, because of challenges being faced now, are not going to be able to pay during those deadlines. And there are a number of questions of, including going to your creditor about payment plans. Is now a good time, if you know that you're going to have an issue as we head into the tax deadlines that have been postponed, to reach out to try to set up a tax payment plan if that is going to be an issue?
So I understand the concern, both from federal and state. So it would be worth the effort to try to reach out at this point. But keep in mind, both the state and the IRS, the tax agencies are very overwhelmed right now in trying to handle all the situations and everybody working remotely. And so it's worth reaching out to try and address that now, but it will not be a quick resolution, I would say. It's going to take some time to get that.
But it may be a good idea to get out ahead of it and give yourself some time so that you can prepare for the tax deadline.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. And if you haven't done so already, this is the time to pull all those tax documents together, see if you can file, the free files online. And if you have concerns, reach out to a professional or reach out to our office.
Yeah, we've had a question from another participant about being a contract employee and any guidance related to unemployment and how best to understand what they're eligible for, and any resources or places that you recommend that they go in order to learn that information, because it seems like there's a lot of confusion out there.
There really is. And as you've said, and some of the other panelists as well, things are changing. You know, as more assistance and programs come aboard, things are shifting, which is why, again, with the resource page, we are trying to keep up to date and put new things out there every single day. Something just came out today with unemployment that was effective, I think, at noon today. So for sure, check for unemployment. Again, be patient. You know, you can file online. I think that was the new announcement today, is that everybody can file for the state and federal unemployment for Maryland on Maryland's website starting today, all in one place. So for sure, go ahead and go online and apply for that. For other benefits though, reach out to the Community Action Agency or to CASH to do a benefit screening to see about the other benefits that you may be eligible for.
Well, I appreciate that. And we've received a lot of concerns and questions about both the unemployment and with gig workers and contract workers in particular, because that I think is the most confusing, and that has been the biggest change in the ability to provide for filing of that and for answers of that has been a particular challenge. And the state, as you mentioned, has announced that they're moving forward with that, although it's gone much slower than any of us would like. And you know, we've also gotten a number of questions here today from participants about the $1,200 federal checks, particularly from retirees on fixed incomes, that has been a major challenge. It's my understanding that the checks have started to go out. I just wanted to check with you, Sue, if that's your understanding, and then what advice is being offered to folks who don't receive a $1,200 check, and at what point should that present a problem to them, knowing that there might be an issue of ever receiving it, and where should they go for help and guidance?
So great points, Andrew, and a couple of thoughts on that. One is our small business owners, you know, our gig economies, our contractors, our sole proprietors are really in a tough spot right now, and they really need to find out what programs they're eligible to receive assistance in. That's going to be challenging as their income is getting reduced. As far as the economic impact payments or the stimulus checks, I do know of people who have received them. I also know lots of people who have not. So it is going to take a while. Again, we do have that webinar on Monday that's going to explain who's eligible for them and how the process works. But in a very short note, if someone has already filed taxes and has a direct deposit account on file with the IRS, that is the quickest way to be able to get that. They are going to be issuing checks at some point, but I've heard it could take until September for some people to receive those checks. So if it's possible for the person that already has, you know, on file with the IRS, they're probably going to get their checks sooner than others. There is a website that the IRS has set up, and again, that's on our resource page, of where people can go in and enter their information in order to have that direct deposit account on file with the IRS. That is the quickest way to get this check versus the paper check that, again, may take till September.
Great. We have another question from a gentleman about the challenge for a lot of people who don't have more than $400 in their savings accounts. And as they wait, as you mentioned, the $1,200 checks could take quite some time to come. Some of the other questions, do you have any advice for folks who are experiencing that level of financial insecurity?
Absolutely. I've talked to over 20 people in the last week who are in the exact same kind of situation where, as much as Irene mentioned, it is critical to create that cash reserve or that savings, and that's something we all want to start doing. Some people have not been in the opportunity or the habit of being able to have that. So if you don't, what's really critical is you need to look exactly what money's coming in, if any. And a lot of people I've talked to, there is no money coming in right now because they haven't been able to get those assistance payments yet. Start thinking about, what do you need for food and medications? Literally just circle this down to exactly what has to go out right now. You may not be able to make your rent right now. And for right now, you cannot be evicted. You may not be able to pay your utilities right now. And for right now, they cannot be shut off. So for right now, focus on exactly what has to be spent around keeping you healthy, and Gilly, you talked about your last event you did, and what actually affects your mental health as well. So keeping those expenses very narrow and very tight while you're waiting for these assistants to come in.
Appreciate that. The county is trying to step up as much as we can, although obviously we have limited capabilities, but as part of our initial COVID relief package, it included cash assistance to families in crisis, funding for food insecurity programs that we're looking at adding significant amounts of funding to that. We've really ramped up our free and reduced meals program to expand it out beyond just the students initially who were eligible for it. The cash assistance program, we're hoping that those checks begin to go out soon. We have a number of healthcare programs for those who are uninsured and can't afford healthcare, to make sure at this healthcare crisis that nobody's been left behind. And as you mentioned, evictions have been prevented statewide, but actually Montgomery County led the effort on that. We worked closely with the sheriff and the judicial system, and Judge Patty Mitchell and Sheriff Popkin, working closely with county elected officials. We were able to extend that to make sure that didn't happen, which relates both to residential and commercial properties. So some of the small retailers that really would have had an issue are also included in that as well. But I think we all recognize that everything that we have done and are doing is nowhere near enough to meet the magnitude of this challenge. And there have been a lot of questions of how to reach out to different panelists, because the information has been so helpful today. We're going to have a slide at the end of this that has everybody's contact information that we are about to switch over to now. Please feel free to reach out to any of us in our organizations. Sue, Brendan, and Anna, who was going to originally join us, her contact information is here as well. You can also reach out to our office if you are somebody who is facing an issue. If it's a federal issue, we'll try to connect you as best as we can to our federal partners. If it's a state issue, the same way. And if there's an outside organization like CASH or others that are doing this, we'll try to provide you with those resources. We'll also have some information that we will be providing with resources, many of which were discussed today, that we'll be sharing. So stay tuned for that information. And I just want to once again thank all of our panelists for joining us today. This has been an incredibly informative hour to really learn about these issues, which are absolutely critical at this time of crisis. We know that there are so many more questions that are asked and will be asked, that there is so much uncertainty out there, but this was a really important start to answering a lot of those questions, a lot of tremendous information with terrific expertise, myself excluded. But I was happy to facilitate with a great group of panelists who actually know what they're talking about. And just want to say that we understand the challenges that so many people are facing. We really want to hear from you if you are facing an issue and want to reach out to us for help. And my office's information and my information is up on the screen now, and hope that you will reach out to us directly as well, so that we can solve your problems as best as I can. So with my deep appreciation to our panelists, with a gratitude for everybody who's joined us today, stay safe, stay well, stay home, and make sure that you're taking care of yourself, take care of your family, and take care of your neighbors. Take care, and happy Friday.